I feel like this clip is the perfect one to use to counter that whole advanced mobility is a lie kind of narrative where they're so focused on sprinting to P2 versus walking to P2 when there's clearly so much more that goes into Halo 5's mechanics that will launch you across the map at high speeds. Now, the first part of it is, once again, new meta tech right here, right? We're using the super slide in another creative way, but this time to launch me across the entire map. Now, practicality-wise, we got to talk about that, of course, but still, very satisfying, very fast launch, and it sends me to camo right away. So I was thinking if you're playing twos, in twos it might be really effective, right? Because there's less people on the map. You might have that timing if you spawn in car bubble, and depending on whether or not there's a player on spawn or where these enemies are, you just have to have the awareness at the time. You could find timing, I think, to cross map launch yourself and get to camo. In other situations, maybe you could try to cut off a flag on pink side, though it might be better to overextend. It's really risk versus reward. You got to consider it and try to be creative, find opportunities to use this properly. But
Perfect kill! You're 10 kills from the win!
how I set it up, this was the best way that I could think of setting it up. You can try to find other creative ways, because what I've tried to do is sprint, thrust, and like try to thrust off without having to jump to set it up. You know, like maybe turn this way somehow and then like thrust, resprint, slide, land on the ramp. But the objective is to land on the ramp with a high speed so I can launch myself. So what I did to set it up is, let's say you spawn car bubble, turn, jump, and then thrust, resprint, slide, jump, and you send yourself over to pink. Depending on the angle, you can get yourself a little bit more to the right. From there, you can sprint, thrust into the wall. I've showed this technique many times, right? Sprint, just time a thrust, and then you clamber up. That's literally all there is to it. You want to hit this part of the wall and just thrust. I hold jump as well, as it's a habit, and it kind of just helps ensure that I get a nice, satisfying launch if you hold jump after thrusting, but it's not necessary, at least not for this one. But just like that, something to practice, and you'll get up to P2 nice and quick. And then after that, I had clambered up to P2 and then sprinted, dropped, and did this really interesting drop slide that like launched me out to car. Depending on how I hit this, I'll go very far. This bottom mid pedestal in general, very interesting part of the map, because you can actually launch yourself all four directions. So I can launch to car, I can launch to that side, pink, pink, and then car again, depending on how I hit this slide, which can be very useful. Hard to set up because it's bottom mid, like it's a very vulnerable area of the map. Gotta have good timing once again, so it's hard to find a good opportunity, but just knowing that you can do it, you can find really creative ways to use it, like even just to get to car one, just like that, right? So I'm drop sliding, but there's something to keep in mind when you drop slide on this this ledge here, because it's so steep. If a ramp is this steep, you gotta get kind of creative. Notice how if I try to just walk straight off and then slide, it doesn't connect me with the ramp, because if I just sprint off, I miss it altogether, because it's literally that steep, right? So what you have to do to still hit the drop slide is you have to kind of hit it at an angle. So I sprint, what I do to line it up is I sprint forward as if I'm going to car one, but then last second I turn, and then I come out to the right there, and then land and slide when I hit the floor. Like that, right? So you got to do this like kind of this last second sideways turn to kick yourself out on an angle, but you start by sprinting out forward that way or sprinting out forward this way. And if you get it right, you literally kick yourself over. So if you get the hang of that, it can definitely be useful. And this area in general is kind of like a half pipe, because you can drop slide that and then you can ramp slide back, right? This area here, you can do a standard ramp slide to kick yourself back. Now, I haven't talked about that in this video just yet. This is one of 3 ways that you can interact with ramps in this game. There's a third one that we'll talk about. It's honestly, sliding and ramps are crazy in this game. All of this stuff is kind of new meta. Only recently, I think, are pros really using it. But I have a video on this. Standard ramp sliding, you can do this on any ramp. You just have to perfectly time a slide on the ramp and you'll launch yourself out forward. The timing is very specific. So you got to sprint and you want to slide almost immediately after you start going down the ramp. Not like the instant you start going down, but you want to just like 1 or 2 steps down the ramp, then you slide. You get a feel for it the more time you put in, and if you really get that nice sweet spot timing, it'll send you so quick. It's a great way to get to bottom mid. You save your thrust, right? And I can start chowing window. Like, look how quickly I'm getting over to window, right? So useful. the way to know if you're hitting it correctly is if you hit crouch too early to slide, then something will happen where you trip and you go nowhere. Where if I do it, so if I try to time the slide the instant, like that, see how I went nowhere? I call that tripping. I have a detailed video on this, by the way. I'll link it in the description if you guys want more info. But if I slide too early, I trip. If I slide too late, I get a regular slide that's not useful. So you got to find that crouch timing. It's the same for every ramp. There's a sweet spot timing. Even this right here has a sweet spot timing where if I kick it, if I hit that timing perfectly, I kick myself off and I go very far. You get that, you get the hang of it. You can use it anywhere, on any ramp, in any map. So you'll start to see that in future clips here, how creative you can get with it. So after I kicked myself over to car, I did this nice clean wall climb that sent me into the car attic like that, without a clamber, right? I landed right in the window, so my reticle's placed, I can fire shots right away, and it was a fast climb too. This is the best, most efficient way to climb this wall and to make sure you get like the most mileage out of this technique here. Most of the time what happens is people end up like climbing the first one and then end up like out front somewhere, and they take a long time to hit the second clamber. Maybe they have to burn a thrust, maybe they clamber the window, whatever. It's just kind of sloppy in that way, and you're exposed, you'll get shot for free. So if you want the best results here, you want to make sure you hit the first clamber ledge as low as possible, and then try to stay on this corner. Try not to let yourself fly out front of the base, because the second ledge is on the corner right above it. So don't crouch, like push your body against the wall and don't hold crouch, and just double tap. I hold clamber, like I hold the clamber, so I double tap and hold, and then I hit the second one right away, and then I do a crouch jump to get into the window. Something that I do to do it fast and efficiently is I also slide into it like that. So I do like a slide and a late jump. So I come out with a low jump and then clamber, clamber. And honestly, you're not going to hit it every time. It's not easy to do. What I would say is the easiest way would be to just push your body. Don't hold crouch, just like that, right? And get in that way. That's the easiest, most effective way. I then connected it into a slide off spring thrust into the other attic, which this is for style. You probably wouldn't want to burn your thrust like this. Both these ledges though are spring jump height, so you can use your slide off here to connect yourself back and forth. So sliding off, of course, is sprinting and timing a slide before you leave the ledge, so that you take your slide or your sprint slide momentum and you carry it into that next jump. So it's a really cool way to connect yourself back and forth here, is to slide off, land, spring jump when you hit the floor. You just go from one ledge to the other. This is the best way to do it. Like that, and then you can start to place your reticle to top mid even before you get to this ledge, so you're already ready to shoot. Like this is some Shotzzy movement stuff. This is how he would get from window to window normally. The last thing I did here, I actually messed up. I tried to do a drop slide and kick myself out to Pink Street, which this is kind of ridiculous, but even this little lip you can drop slide off of. Like any downward slope in this game, I'm telling you, you can get creative and find a way to drop slide off it. So what I've been doing is kind of going forward on an angle like that. That one was okay, but you can really kick yourself into that Pink Street. Just make sure that when you're doing this, you're thinking about your reticle placement when you come out the other side. So whether it's like, you know, having your reticle over to P2, so you're like ready for that fight. So don't sacrifice placement to hit fancy stuff. I do that. I make that mistake a lot. But in general, like, you can get creative here. If you sprint forward and then fall diagonally, you can land on that part of it. That's what I'm trying to do, is like sprint and then diagonal slide off and then kick myself over so I can get over to the street a little bit faster.